So I'm going to talk about my chronic medical condition. For the last not quite 20 years, I have dealt with type 1 diabetes, also known as juvenile or insulin-dependent diabetes. And there are multiple kinds of diabetes, but type 1 in particular is an autoimmune disorder. So insulin-producing cells in the pancreas get killed, and the body's unable to metabolize carbs that you eat into fat. So you have to give yourself shots to keep that process working again, shots of insulin. Type 1 diabetes is not punishment for eating too much sugar or like going to White Castle. The Surgeon General tweeted this recently and then deleted it after people got really upset. Not really how it works. But you know, stigma and misunderstanding aside, managing blood glucose is like a pretty tricky process. Too much and you get sick, and too little blood glucose and you get sick, and you may die. A lot of people see diabetics testing, pricking their fingers, and giving shots, and they think that's the hard thing about having diabetes. But really, I would say the hard thing is not that it's not just a case of doing that. You know, diet, activity level, time of day, stress, sickness. I don't have a uterus, but hormone fluctuations, those tend to all have an impact and make a mess of things. And diet even isn't just a case about simple inputs and outputs. You know, how carbs are absorbed depends on what kind of carbs they are, as well as the amount of fat and protein that you eat along with those things. And so you give yourself insulin, but insulin has different kinds of activity curves depending on the different kinds of insulin, the kind of insulin you're using. If you eat something at time 0 here and then 2 hours later you want to check to see if you gave yourself the right amount of insulin, you got to do calculus to figure out how much insulin to give yourself. So it's kind of a mess sometimes, and it's a lot to juggle in your head. 2 days doing the same things could result in wildly different results. I biked to work in the weather this morning. I can vouch for. It was kind of worse than that, actually. You know, we talked about testing blood glucose, implying that you might fail. Doctors also order tests that are kind of like the traditional measurements of how you're doing at treating diabetes. And those metrics also can be misleading. You see here the A1C test, which estimates average blood glucose over the last 3 months. Now, 2 of these people were able to get a good number by having low readings to kind of counteract their high readings. And only example 3 here is actually doing the healthy things. So, you know, I guess I see it as 3 different problems. You know, there's the technical problem of kind of just keeping things on the level and, you know, using the available tools. You know, but I also want to be present for people around me, and, you know, I want to support them and feel supported. You know, not be that brittle, sickly guy. So my goal for a long time was to hit these numbers, and I didn't do particularly well. So, you know, that kind of raises the question, you know, what's the point? Like, what would success look like? Meanwhile, technology has advanced a lot. You know, I got a pump, so I don't have to do shots like I used to, and I got a continuous glucose monitor, so I don't have to prick my finger, and I can upload data to the internet so my care providers can go look at them. So, you know, yay capitalism. And but the open source scene has actually developed some really cool stuff. We've got software to monitor and report on blood glucose. OpenAPS is a artificial pancreas hardware and software reference design so that you can actually build a closed loop system that takes blood glucose out of the cloud and makes treatment decisions. So now we got some more devices though. There's all these batteries that can fail, and you know, I can't leave a device at home. You know, I forget how to do things the old way when one of these devices breaks or fails or runs out of batteries. So, you know, I added all these things piecemeal with like specific goals. You know, get a good night's sleep. You know, keep up with my kid. Don't spend a whole day without getting any alarms. And this is an example of a recent day with artificial pancreas design. You know, it's actually not that good, but if that's bad, that's the new bad. That's pretty cool. So I know people get better results with less tech, and they don't have to like configure cron tabs on a Raspberry Pi. But you know, I do get burned out and take breaks. And, you know, but the automation helps, and I think that the data has taught me a lot of useful things that are kind of independent of the tech. So the story over the journey of the last few years is I feel like I'm living closer to the values that I kind of imagined for myself, and I think that drives better numbers. So I have better looking metrics when I don't define myself by the metrics. So, you know, I think it's less of a grind as I weave this stuff into and talk about it in the language of everyday life versus like being off in some other domain that unfortunately maybe get imposed upon me. So, you know, in your messy technical and social problems that you run into, you know, I guess I'd ask, you know, what kind of data does your problem emit that could make maybe you could make more relatable? And can you attach that to more familiar language and that your peers are excited to uphold? And, you know, maybe it's not that different than a pancreas. Thanks.